I had a request for meals made in my Suvie machine that don't come from the Suvie meal kit, so I thought I'd start out with Suvie egg bites. These are really similar to the ones you get at Starbucks. I like them because you can eat them right away, or you can save them in your fridge or freezer and they reheat really well. You do need a silicone egg bite mold for this, and Suvie sells them, but they're kind of expensive. So I got mine on Amazon, and you can do the same. Just make sure it fits in the metal Suvie tray. So the first thing you want to do is figure out what kind of add-ins you want. I did bacon and green onion. I overcooked my bacon a little bit. Normally I do a better job, and I actually have a video about my favorite method of cooking bacon that I'll include a link to. But in this case, I overcooked it. It won't affect the taste too much, but it does kind of affect the appearance. So sorry about that. You can also add in other things. I think spinach, tomato, bell pepper, even mushroom would be really good in this recipe. So chop up whatever add-ins you have and set them aside, and then pull out your blender. You're going to put in 3 eggs, a 1/3 cup of full-fat cottage cheese, and a 1/3 cup of shredded cheese. Cheddar is usually recommended, but you can just use whatever shredded cheese you have on hand, which is what I did. And then you're going to put the lid on and go ahead and blend and make sure everything looks nice and mixed up and liquid, and then set that aside for a second too. You need to make sure that you grease your egg bite mold. I used butter, but you could use oil or a non-stick cooking spray if you prefer. And then at this point, you're going to want to put your silicone tray into the metal Suvie tray, and that's because once you have the egg mixture in there, it becomes really hard to move without spilling everywhere. I did this once, so I'm telling you from experience, make sure you put the silicone tray into the metal tray before you fill it. Then go ahead and put your add-ins into the bottom, and then pour the egg mixture in on top of that. You want to get them about 2/3 full, like if you were making muffins, but you can fill them a little more than that. You just want to give yourself a little bit of room because you are going to be picking this up and you don't want to make a huge mess. Next, you need to fill the metal tray with water. You want to get it to about the bottom of the silicone tray lip, and that's because if you fill it more than that, you'll end up with water in your egg bites, but if you fill it less than that, then you won't have the egg bites completely submerged in the water, and that's what actually cooks them so that they have such a nice texture. So now you're going to open your sous vide machine and very carefully put the tray in. I cook mine in the bottom so I don't have to do any extra lifting, and then I don't put anything on the top because these cook for such a long time that I don't want to risk overcooking, unless you are doing a double batch or something like that. At this point, you want to close the machine and select sous vide as your cooking method. You are going to cook at a temperature of 175 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours. It will actually take longer than 2 hours because it has to come up to temperature first. So it's probably more like 2.5 hours. So if you're planning to eat these right away, just budget that into your time frame. And then it's going to ask you to make sure that the water reservoir is filled to the max line. You want to make sure that you do this with distilled water so you don't get calcium or other minerals inside of your machine. Then it's ready to go and it will just cook and you can go do something else. You can also find this recipe in the Suvie app, and that's one of the great things about the Suvie is if you're not sure how to cook something in the machine, you can usually look it up on the app and it will give you information on how to cook it. It usually includes things like what cook method to use, what temperature to set, and how long to cook something. And I've used this to look up things like how to cook chicken breast, how to cook drumsticks, and how to cook various vegetables in my sous vide, and it has been great. So look out for future videos about cooking some of those other things in my sous vide, and if that's something you're interested in, please leave me a comment. When your egg bites are ready, the machine will beep, and you'll also get an alert from the app on your phone. So at this point, you will open the machine and again, very carefully pull the tray out. It is still full of water. I like to drain off a little bit of the water into the sink, just being really careful not to drop the egg bites out or get the water into them. And then I pull out the silicone tray before I dump the rest of the water out. They are done at this point, but I like to let it cool a little bit so they're easier to handle and so they don't break up when I'm trying to pop them out of the molds. They're delicious. The texture is nice and silky, and like I said, they're very versatile. You can put whatever add-ins you want, including salt and pepper to taste, or other spices and seasonings, and just kind of play around with it and make it your own. One of the reasons that I decided to use this recipe is that I'm doing a lower carb diet. So look out for future videos on how I'm using tech like the sous vide machine and some other things to try to make healthier lifestyle choices. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. If you'd like to see future videos about meals made in the sous vide, please leave me a comment and a like, and thanks for watching.